It begins not with a word, but with a glance, a brief, measured meeting of eyes across a crowded ballroom in Regency England, where silence could speak, louder than confession, and a simple look could ripple through a lifetime. Courtship in this era wasn't merely romance. It was ritual, strategy, and performance, a fragile balance of reputation and desire choreographed within the rigid social codes of early 19th century Britain. The year might be 1813, or perhaps 1818. The air smells faintly of wax and rosewater, the kind that lingers long after 100 candles have burned low. The orchestra tunes in the corner, and the ladies stand in glittering rows, each draped in pale silk, hair braided with pearls, gloves spotless and white. The men stand opposite, coats tailored to perfection, cravats tied in complex folds that could take an hour to perfect. Here, in these bright drawing rooms, the great theater of love unfolds under the watchful eyes of chaperones and the unspoken judgment of the entire county. To be young and unmarried in Regency England was to live inside a set of invisible walls. Every move was calculated, every word mattered. A misplaced laugh, an unguarded comment, even a dance taken too eagerly. Any of these could tilt the balance between admiration and ruin. For women, especially, the stakes were breathtakingly high. Marriage wasn't simply about affection. It was survival, social security, and sometimes salvation. And so, the first glance carried weight. It was the opening move in a quiet game, one that combined with decorum and the subtle art of appearing to care just enough, to little interest, and one risk being forgotten. Too much, and one risked everything that at the heart of this world was the season. That annual parade of wealth, youth, and hope that took over London from spring through summer. The season was a social marketplace, orchestrated through balls, teas, garden parties, and carefully ranged encounters in Hyde Park. Young ladies came out, meaning they were formally introduced to society as eligible for marriage. They were dressed, trained, and coached for years to perform this debut, to walk, to curtsy, to smile at the right moment, to know how to answer without ever appearing to bold. Imagine it. You are a young woman of 18, your gown pale as morning mist, your gloves buttoned to the elbow. You step into the grand ballroom of Omak's Assembly Rooms, the most exclusive of London's social clubs, where even the air seems to whisper of power and possibility. The chandeliers above gleam like constellations, the floor polished to mirror brightness. Every head turns as you enter. Somewhere near the refreshment table, a man watches. He is perhaps the second son of a noble house, or the heir to a modest estate. His cravat is impeccable, his gloves a shade of ivory that suggests discretion and taste. He does not approach yet. He cannot. There are rules. He must first be introduced by someone of equal social standing. The wrong introduction could tarnish his reputation, and yours does so. The first dance is often the waiting game. You glide through a country set, your eyes skimming faces, hearing laughter, feeling the faint tremor of anticipation under the polite chatter. Courtship in Regency England was as much about stillness as movement, about knowing when not to act out, and when the introduction finally comes, when his name is spoken by a trusted friend or aunt. It begins not with passion but with civility. You exchange bows and curtsies. Your conversation is light, almost painfully so. You speak of the weather, of music, of horses, of who else has returned to London this year. Each word is measured, each glance carefully deployed. The goal is to hint at interest while remaining unshakably proper. Flirtation in Regency England was not loud or impulsive. It lived in the corners of sentences, in the way a fan opened or a handkerchief was dropped. It existed in a shared smile, a slight pause before a bow, a compliment that seemed almost accidental. Entire novels could be written on the meaning of a raised eyebrow at a ball. But this restraint did not mean the emotion was shallow. Beneath the calm surface of civility ran powerful undercurrents of longing, hope, and fear. A man could not simply proclaim affection. He had to earn the right through subtle persistence. A woman, bound by rules that denied her open pursuit, could only signal through suggestion, the brief meeting of eyes, the delicate shift of tone, the way she allowed a dance to linger just a heartbeat too long. And around every potential couple moved the invisible machinery of society. Mothers watched with hawk-like precision, guarding their daughters from unworthy suitors or scandalous attention. Gossip spread faster than candlelight. A single whispered rumor could destroy a season's worth of reputation. That's why discretion was everything that letters played their part. Too, though cautiously. A woman of breeding would never write directly to a man unless they were engaged, but men might write to friends, or even the lady's family, expressing formal admiration. The written word was dangerous in its permanence. Anything to intimate could become evidence of impropriety, even after a connection began to form. The road to engagement was fraught with ceremony. Families had to approve. Fortunes had to be examined. Titles, estates, lineage, all weighed as heavily as affection. A man could not simply fall in love. He had to be able to love respectably. And a woman, no matter how she felt, had to ensure that her husband could provide both stability and social acceptance. In the glitter of the ballroom, then, love was both real and restrained, a paradox that defined the entire age. It wasn't the breathless passion of modern romance, but a slower, quieter fire that burned behind politeness and poetry. Every gesture was coded, every phrase carried double meaning. A simple, "I hope you enjoyed the quadrille," might mean, "I have not stopped thinking of you since last Tuesday." That there were those, of course, who found ways to bend the rules. Secret letters passed by maids. Meetings in the park under the pretext of morning rides. Shared books where words between the lines said what society forbade. But even rebellion had to wear a disguise, a soft one, hidden under lace and duty. And always, there was the unspoken question, is this love, or is it convenience? Was he drawn by affection, or by a dowry? Was she admired for her wit, or her father's fortune? In a world where marriage defined destiny, the difference could mean a lifetime of contentment, or quiet misery behind closed doors. Yet, amid all these constraints, something tender persisted. The thrill of recognition when two souls saw each other beyond the dance and the decorum. The courage it took to whisper affection through rules designed to silence it. The beauty of love not in its display, but in its entrance that as the ball ends and the music fades. Carriages line the street outside. The night air is cool, the sky veiled in fog and starlight. You step out, escorted by family, the weight of expectation on your shoulders and a strange flutter in your chest. Somewhere across the crowd, the man from the dance lingers for a moment too long before bowing and turning away. You wonder if he will call tomorrow. He wonders if he should. And in that hesitation, that exquisite pause between duty and desire, the entire world of Regency courtship quietly breathes. In Regency England, love was rarely spoken. It was signaled, suggested, or wrapped in 1,000 layers of propriety. Society was built upon appearance, and reputation was the most delicate of currencies. To exist in that world meant understanding that every gesture, every glance, every letter, and every silence had meaning. Courtship was not a private affair, but a public performance conducted under the eyes of family, friends, and gossiping tongues. It was an art, and propriety was its brush. The Regency era, roughly 1811 to 1820, was a time when England teetered between elegance and restraint. The Napoleonic Wars were reshaping Europe, but inside the glittering drawing rooms of Mayfair, conversation turned on ribbons, dance cards, and subtle flirtations. Decorum was the invisible law that governed every interaction between men and women. To be improper was not just socially reckless, it was ruinous for a woman. Reputation was everything. It determined her prospects, her social standing, and her very survival. A young lady of good breeding could not walk unchaperoned, could not write freely to a man, could not even express strong emotions without risking her name. Society taught her to smile, but not too brightly, to speak but never too boldly, to appear interested but not desperate. It was a delicate dance, one where every misstep could cost her future. Her education reflected this balance. From girlhood, she learned music, art, needlework, and the graceful performance of social duties. She was taught to play pianoforte beautifully, but never too passionately, to converse wittily, but not too cleverly, to walk with poise and to curtsy with humility. She was raised to attract, but never to pursue. The ideal woman was gentle, composed, modest, and above all, restrained. Men, on the other hand, were bound by a different code, one that demanded honor, discretion, and control. A gentleman was expected to be gallant, but never forward, confident but not arrogant. His words had to be measured, his attentions cautious. To court a lady was not a casual amusement, it was a declaration of intent. A man could flirt, yes, but the moment he showed consistent attention, society assumed his motives were serious. To withdraw them was considered cruel, even dishonorable, and thus, the art of propriety emerged, a language built from boundaries. If passion was the storm, propriety was the dam holding it back, shaping it, controlling it, giving it form. Nowhere was this art more visible than in the ballroom, the grand stage of romance in the Regency world. Balls were more than social gatherings. They were carefully orchestrated rituals of status and courtship. Every dance carried meaning. The first dance of the evening often went to the most favored lady or the most eligible bachelor. To be asked to dance twice by the same partner was a public signal of preference, sometimes even scandalously so. Ladies carried dance cards, small ivory or paper booklets tied with ribbon, where they listed the names of their partners for each dance. An empty space meant opportunity. A name written twice meant danger or devotion. Behind the music and laughter, hearts raced beneath lace and silk. Yet, even this excitement was veiled by perfect manners. Between dances, conversation unfolded in soft tones, filtered through propriety. A compliment had to be subtle. "You dance with such grace." Miss Bennet was acceptable. "You are the loveliest creature I have ever seen" was decidedly not. A glance could be electric, but too long, and it bordered on impropriety. Hands brushed in passing, sending unspoken messages, but they must never linger. And always, there were chaperones, mothers, aunts, widowed cousins, women of unimpeachable reputation who shadowed young ladies like silent sentinels. They sat along the walls of ballrooms, eyes sharp as daggers behind their fans, ready to intercept any whisper of impropriety. Their task was not only to protect virtue, but to ensure the game was played correctly. That courtship remained an elegant negotiation, not an impulsive affair. Letters, too, were governed by the rules of propriety. To receive a letter from a man was an event of immense consequence. An unmarried lady could not correspond privately with a gentleman unless there was an understanding of engagement, or unless the correspondence was filtered through her family. Letters could be read aloud, copied, or even shown to parents for approval. Every sentence, every turn of phrase was weighed and watched. A single misplaced endearment could spark scandal, and yet, within these rigid boundaries, a secret world thrived, a language of coded gestures that lovers used to express what words could not. This hidden communication was known as the language of the fan, or the art of signals. A woman's fan Her gloves, her parasol, all became tools of unspoken emotion. Holding the fan to her cheek might mean "I like you." Dropping it might signal "we are being watched." Slowly opening and closing it could mean "you may speak freely." These gestures were not always formally codified, but they were widely understood by those who knew the game. Even the way a lady held her gloves, or how a gentleman adjusted his cravat, could convey intentions too bold for speech. This world of subtlety gave birth to the era's great paradox. Passion lived beneath layers of restraint. In a society obsessed with control, desire became all the more powerful for its quietness. When love could not be shouted, it was whispered. When it could not be touched, it was felt in the pulse of proximity. Imagine a moment in a crowded drawing room. A man stands by the piano, watching a woman as she turns the pages of her music book. Their eyes meet, briefly, but long enough. Her hand trembles slightly as she lowers her fan. No words are exchanged, yet everything is said. That was Regency love, as fragile as a sigh, as dangerous as a secret. But propriety also served as a gatekeeper. It separated the acceptable from the forbidden, the noble from the common. The lower classes had no such luxury of subtlety. Their courtships were more direct, more honest, less veiled by etiquette. For the elite, however, love was diplomacy. It was measured, deliberate, strategic, every move calculated to preserve social balance. Beneath this surface of civility, heartbreak was common. Many women found themselves courted not for affection, but for fortune. A rich heiress could find herself pursued by men whose affection ended where her inheritance began. Meanwhile, poor but beautiful women, those without dowries, often became the tragic figures of their day. Admired but unmarriageable. It was not uncommon for marriages to be arranged more for convenience than love. Parents negotiated alliances as if they were political treaties. A daughter's smile could be traded for a title. A son's ambition could be secured with a dowry. Romantic ideals existed, yes, but they often bowed before financial necessity, and still, within this elaborate social machine, love managed to bloom, stubbornly, quietly, defiantly. When a couple found genuine affection, it was all the more profound for having survived the gauntlet of expectation. A stolen letter, a shared dance, a whispered promise. These small rebellions against the tyranny of propriety carried the weight of eternity. By the firelight of drawing rooms and the moonlit paths of Hyde Park, the lovers of Regency England learned to speak in riddles and restraint. They learned that passion, when bound by grace, could burn brighter for being hidden. When viewed from the distance of time, their world seems quaint, even suffocating. But perhaps there was beauty in its restraint, a kind of poetry in the patience it demanded. Love in the Regency era was not loud, but it was enduring. It did not rush, but it remembered. And beneath the lace, the rules, and the silence, two hearts could still find each other, even if only through the smallest glance. Across a crowded ballroom, love in Regency England was not simply a matter of hearts, it was a matter of survival. It was a high-stakes game played under chandeliers and over tea, where every emotion was weighed against reputation, and every choice could shape an entire life. Beneath the waltzes and polite smiles, there lurked a quiet terror, the fear of scandal. For in that elegant age of manners and measured grace, scandal was death, not of the body, but of the soul, of standing, of one's very place in society. It could erase years of good breeding with a single rumor, undo fortunes, and exile one from polite company as surely as if one had committed a crime. To love recklessly was to gamble everything. Imagine the daughter of a respectable family, admired, courted, invited to every ball. One evening, she lingers too long in the garden with a suitor. A servant glimpses them in the half-light, whispers spread, and by morning, Her name is no longer spoken in drawing rooms. No proof is needed. Gossip was conviction enough. Her suitor may vanish. Her prospects crumble. And her life, once gilded with promise, shrinks to the margins of society. That was the silent threat that haunted every fluttering fan and trembling glance. Love had to obey the law of appearances to maintain those appearances. Families became masters of discretion. Mothers guarded daughters like diplomats guard secrets. Fathers watched potential suitors through narrowed eyes, calculating wealth and lineage. Even friends were careful. Too much sympathy for the wrong person could tarnish one's own standing. Courtship was thus both beautiful and brutal, an affair of emotion wrapped in strategy. Behind every marriage was a transaction, often hidden beneath the lace of affection. Dowries were negotiated with the same formality as trade agreements. Estates were discussed alongside compatibility. Love was encouraged, yes, but only when it conveniently aligned with fortune, class, and family ambition. The wealthy used marriage as currency, and those without means often found themselves trapped between longing and duty. Many women entered unions not out of affection, but out of necessity, to secure a future, to escape dependence, to fulfill expectation. Men, too, were bound by unspoken chains. A gentleman of good birth was expected to marry appropriately, meaning within his class, and with consideration of property or influence. To fall for a woman without status was to invite ruin. Some did it anyway, driven by the kind of passion that refuses logic, and history remembers them as cautionary tales. There were elopements, whispered scandals that rippled through parlors like fire through dry fields. Couples fled to Scotland, to Gretna Green, where English marriage laws held no sway, and a blacksmith could wed them with the strike of a hammer. Such stories thrilled the public imagination, but destroyed families. What society condemned in principle, it adored in rumor, and rumor was a living thing in Regency England. It flowed through letters, newspapers, servants' chatter, and the ceaseless hum of drawing room conversation. The ton, that exclusive circle of the aristocracy, fed on it. A lady's fainting spell, a gentleman's absence from a ball, a misplaced letter, all became fodder for speculation. Even the smallest indiscretion could become the season's favorite scandal. Yet, for all its cruelty, this obsession with reputation also maintained a kind of fragile order. Propriety kept chaos at bay. It gave shape to society's fears, boundaries to its passions. It was both a cage and a comfort. Still, within this world of delicate facadas, there were those who dared to love beyond the rules. The poets and romantics of the age, Byron, Shelley, Keats, gave voice to desires that polite society suppressed. Their verses spoke of forbidden love, of hearts that defied convention, of women who longed to be more than ornaments and silk. Their words scandalized some but awakened others. They became the quiet revolutionaries of emotion. In private journals and unsent letters, real men and women wrestled with the same turmoil. A vicar's daughter falling for a soldier, a nobleman entranced by a governess, a widow daring to love again. These stories were lived in silence, hidden beneath propriety's shadow. For many, their love never reached daylight, but it existed, fiercely and tenderly, in secret. Even marriage itself was not always the end of the struggle. Many unions, once sealed, revealed the gap between romance and reality. A husband chosen for security could prove cold or cruel. A wife selected for beauty might lack affection or warmth. Divorce, though technically possible, was scandalous and nearly unattainable, especially for women. The law favored men. A wife's fortune, her children, even her body, belonged to her husband once they wed. Love, if it ever lived there, often faded beneath duty. And yet, amidst these constraints, tenderness endured, letters preserved and dusty. Archives tell of deep devotion, of men writing from battlefields to wives who waited faithfully at home, of women whispering prayers for husbands who sailed away on imperial missions. Love adapted. It survived in the spaces propriety could not reach when viewed through modern eyes. It is easy to judge the Regency world as repressive, its people prisoners of etiquette and fear, but beneath its rules was something profoundly human, the desire to find connection in a world that demanded restraint. It was a time when love had to be clever, subtle, and brave, when every whispered "I love you" was an act of defiance against an empire of manners. Consider again the image of the ballroom, the polished floor, the chandeliers, the laughter. Beneath that glitter lay hearts trembling not from dance, but from danger. Every love affair was a risk, every word a wager, every smile a promise that might cost everything. The price of love in Regency England was not just one's peace, but one's place. It was a test of how much the heart could endure within the narrow confines of decorum. To love truly meant to walk a tightrope stretched between passion and propriety, knowing that one slip could send everything crashing down. And yet, it is precisely that fragility that makes their world so mesmerizing. Love, when surrounded by barriers, becomes more precious. The stolen glance across a crowded room, the secret exchange of a pressed flower, the touch of a gloved hand, all became eternal in memory because they were forbidden in life that so end. We imagine the lovers of Regency England, the shy debutante, the conflicted gentleman, the secret poet. We see not repression, but resilience. They found ways to express feeling in a language that forbade it. They created poetry out of silence, devotion out of distance, and meaning out of manners. And perhaps that is the final truth of their story, that even in a society obsessed with control, love remains untamable. It may hide beneath lace and etiquette. It may whisper instead of roar, but it endures. The rules of Regency England shaped it. They refined it, tested it, sometimes even broke it, but they never destroyed it, because no matter how tightly society holds its grip, the human heart has always known how to find its way between the cracks of propriety and bloom, quietly, into something eternal.